The top business stories, live from the Sky Newsroom. The complete shutdown of Europe's biggest airport. Could it, should have, it been avoided? We'll look ahead to the spending review as the Chancellor announces she'll be axing thousands of jobs in the civil service. And from the country's finances to the state of our roads. We'll have the latest on the Prime Minister's warning to councils over the so-called pothole plague. A very good morning on this Monday, Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey, and we're going to start with the fallout from the chaos we saw at Heathrow on Friday. Europe's biggest and busiest airport grinded to a halt. The cause of the shutdown, a nearby fire at an electric substation. Passengers were stranded across the globe, and there have been questions, of course, over how such a small fire off-site could lead to such carnage. The chief of the National Grid has now said the airport had enough power for remaining substations to keep running. Well, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply teaches best practice when it comes to electricity stress testing in more than 160 countries. Its CEO is Ben Farrell, and he joins me now. Very good morning to you, Ben. We've had a bit of a row, haven't we, over the weekend? Essentially, the National Grid saying, you know what, Heathrow, you did have enough power, and Heathrow saying, kind of chucking it back, if you like, at the National Grid. Where do you fall down on this, Ben?
Thanks, Darren. Just to lay out the sort of the context that we're talking about, clearly, rightly, everyone's focused on the passenger disruption, but it's worth adding the scale of commercial traffic and goods coming into Heathrow is enormous every day, about 5,000 tonnes annually, a fifth of all product coming into the UK, 200 plus billion pounds. And this is a tightly wound machine on a daily basis that needs to be executed in a sort of seamless way. Even the smallest delay can have knock-on consequences. Clearly, we've got members all around the world, as you mentioned, and many of them have been in touch through the weekend talking about this. And the very first thing they've all said to me is, what were the contingency, the resilience plans at Heathrow Airport? And were these not stress tested, as you described? I mean, best practice we teach is not only the identification of those business interruption risks which play, a part of your daily, analysis, but also then identifying those and testing them and really rehearsing them and really understanding how you would implement a contingency plan. And I'd be really surprised if they haven't done that. This is why this is so mystifying, because it's pretty much 101, making sure you've got continuous power type stuff. So, I think that there's some work to do there at Heathrow to really understand what's going on.
We heard the word unprecedented used a lot on Friday, didn't we, Ben? And it is unprecedented. But as you say, the idea about having backup plans is to deal with unprecedented situations. Are you then saying that you find it quite incredible that Heathrow essentially didn't seem to have an alternative that meant it could operate as normal?
Yes, I think in any business, there are sort of normal lists of things that you would prepare for. Whether you're running a shop or a bank or a data center, you would think, well, these are the sorts of things that could reasonably go wrong on a daily basis, and power disruption is likely to be one of them. So in all circumstances, a reliable supply needs to be put in place. And it really is surprising, therefore, that this hasn't happened. And, we're learning more as we go. And I do keep in touch with our members around the world, and they've highlighted quite a number of airports where they have fabulous levels of resilience. In Doha, for example, where I was recently, you can see the efforts that are put into that. I'm sure the row that has broken out sort of reflects the sort of mystery that this hasn't taken place. So I think there's a bit of work to do to understand exactly what was going on there and why this isn't the case.
What would your understanding be of why Heathrow didn't have or didn't seem to have this alternative? Is it cost or is it oversight? What's your thought process on why, unlike, as you were suggesting, other major hub airports, Heathrow didn't seem to have this absolute backup plan?
Difficult to say specifically without being involved in the sort of investigation, but on the face of it, you would have rehearsed it, you would have tested it, you'd have, intriguingly, I discovered that 10% of London's data centres are fed from the same substation that was taken out by the fire. but they didn't miss a beat. They all ran on because they had alternative power sources and backups and the like. So, there has to be some questions about the preparedness, the rehearsal that was taking place at Heathrow. I think, around the world, people are looking at Heathrow. It is a major hub to some extent, increasingly across the globe. What I can see, rather like the Suez Canal is such an important, trade route. These hubs around the world where so many products pass through daily are increasingly important to keep the supply flowing. So there's great responsibility with this, and testing it properly needs to be really at the forefront of the board's mind down there.
Well, I was listening to someone this morning suggesting that it's not just Heathrow that doesn't have a kind of full backup plan, if you like, but that no airport in the UK seems to have it. And we've got some other big airports, Gatwick, Manchester, Stansted and others. I mean, would you now expect all of those airports, I assume probably this is what they're doing on this Monday morning, is also ensuring that if something like this was to happen to them, that they would then have alternative power sources to carry on?
Yeah, I think, under the banner of critical national infrastructure, which Heathrow Airport is designated as, this needs to be looked at. And with the addition of a third runway, increasingly the eggs are in that basket. So we need a really reliable service there. There's no question about that. Clearly, the question about capacity of other airports needs to come into play. But as the world is increasingly interconnected, and I spend some time traveling around meeting all the excellent SIPS members who are planning supply chain resilience and preparedness for disruption around the world, they are increasingly agile and prepared to move around, if necessary. So with some thought, I think this sort of incident really is avoidable.
OK, really appreciate your time this morning. That is Ben Farrell there. And this is clearly an argument that's not going to go away with various reviews into it. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's move on now to the spring statement. The Chancellor has already confirmed that she will be cutting thousands of civil service jobs. But what else can we expect from Rachel Reeves on Wednesday? Let's speak to Simon French, Chief Economist and Head of Research at Panmure Liberum. Very good morning, as always, to you, Simon. Just first of all, just set out what we think we need to hear from the Chancellor on Wednesday. We saw contraction, didn't we, in January? The state of the overall economy is not great, and the public finances aren't either.
Yeah, so there are two key updates coming from the Chancellor on Wednesday. The first is what conditional economic forecast she will get from her budgetary watchdog, the Office of Budget Responsibility, who saw growth of 2% for the year back in October. They're likely to slash that to about half that level, 1%, off the back of a real slowdown, actually, not just in UK growth momentum, but also global events, which, of course, we'll hear a lot from the Chancellor as she tries to deflect any blame off some of the domestic decisions. And then it is the translation of that growth slowdown and indeed the spike in government borrowing costs, which is both a UK phenomenon and a global phenomenon. And what that has done to something called headroom. This is the amount of money that the Chancellor left herself back in October against her fiscal rules, which she describes as ironclad. She left herself just over £9 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's less than 1% of public spending. It's likely that that is evaporated. So what we've heard in recent days about welfare savings, departmental spending cuts, they're designed to plug what is a new black hole.
And it is interesting that, isn't it, that the government have kind of boxed themselves in slightly, and they didn't want this actually to be a major fiscal event. Rachel Reeves talked about having just one a year. That would be the budget. The other thing that we'll be looking out for is not just decisions around government spending, but is also clearly the OBR and what they have to say about the state of our economy and finances.
That's right. So the Office of Budget Responsibility will, I think it's of little doubt, cut the growth estimate for the UK for the next 12 months. The key imponderable is how much they see that as growth lost or growth delayed, because the way the government rightly sets out its fiscal rules is it's dependent on how much borrowing it does in 5 years' time. And therefore, if the size of the economy, which in the short term reduces the size of the tax take, gets caught up later in the cycle, then that is less of a headwind to the public finances. Whereas if the OBR conclude actually that they're not going to get that growth back, that is a far more significant problem for the Chancellor. So that judgment is key. The other element, of course, is on productivity growth, which has been very, very poor, because that dictates the potential run rate of the economy, and the productivity data really since October has been really very, very weak. And it's whether the OBR throw in the towel in terms of how fast the economy can grow.
And Simon, the big problem then for the Chancellor potentially is that when we move beyond the spring statement, everyone will then start speculating about what Rachel Reeves can do next, about whether she may well have to look at tax rises again.
I think that is the big concern going into the major fiscal event. And I'm using the government's language here. You've picked up on it. They're trying to describe this as a minor fiscal event. The major fiscal event comes in the autumn, October, November time. And yes, with limited amount of headroom, which even with the welfare cuts, with the departmental spending reductions, there's still going to be mercifully or very little amount of headroom. The speculation, which can be very damaging, we see business leaders talk about this all the time, the speculation over tax increases is almost as damaging as the tax increases themselves. And so the degree to which you can put to bed the idea of tax increases coming later in the year, I think that'll be a key judgment on how the spring statement is received.
And just very finally, Simon, this is also against the backdrop of lots of global uncertainty. Keir Starmer at the weekend in the New York Times praising Donald Trump to the hilt, if you like, trying to, as best he can, avoid any tariffs on the 2nd of April, which is the date that Donald Trump keeps talking about. And that is just adds to, as I said, the uncertainty, doesn't it, for the government in trying to make these decisions, because we don't know what way the global economy is going to go.
We don't. And the UK, by international standards, is a pretty open economy. So therefore, if global growth, global trade slows down, the UK is impacted. Now, it has to be said also that the direct trade, goods trade relationship with the US is relatively small. So that first order impact on UK trade is likely to be relatively contained, regardless of what tariff Donald Trump chooses to levy. But certainly, you're absolutely right. The Prime Minister is trying to make concessions, make quite positive sounds around the Trump administration to try and offset that risk that makes the fiscal situation potentially even worse later in the year.
OK, Simon, as always, appreciate your time this morning. Simon French there joining us, and we'll, of course, have full and continuing coverage of the spring statement here on Sky News from 11 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Now, let's stick with public spending. Let's talk about what the government has described as the pothole plague. Soon councils across England will be forced to prove they're fixing the roads or risk losing millions of funding. £1.6 billion will be spent on road maintenance from mid-April, but local authorities must publish annual progress reports to qualify for that extra money. Let's speak to Ben Roding, who is General Manager of JCB. Ben, very good morning to you. This is a big problem across lots of the country, one that gets lots of vehicle owners, car drivers, pretty angry.
Absolutely. Potholes, the highways network is something that affects every one of us. It's the local authority's biggest asset, valued at £400 billion. So that's where JCB and the wider pothole partnership have really looked to make a step change with British roads and push for, as we see today, performance measuring and the delivery of permanent repairs, rather than some of the temporary repairs that we see today on our road network.
Ben, dare I ask what a pothole partnership is? So it's when you join up lots of different potholes, is it?
What we've done with the pothole partnership is to create a central voice to try and drive change with our road network. So that consists of the AA, British Cycling, the National Motorcyclist Group, and JCB. Together, what we're trying to do is really convalesce the road network and really try to push innovation and different practice within the highway sector. And
the Prime Minister today has been at a Halfords, I think, looking at the efforts to try and fix potholes. Just in regard to that, what do you make of the government's plans today? They're talking about an extra 500 million quid from mid-April. I mean, that is welcome news, but many may well say it won't touch the sides of those enormous potholes.
Well, today we've definitely welcomed the announcement of performance measurement being used against these local authority and contractor budgets. I think we all recognise the challenge we face. Every penny is scrutinised. And that's where really what we're pushing for is for that money to be used effectively, delivering through innovation like the JCB Pothole Pro that can actually fix these potholes 4 times quicker and at half the cost of some of these more traditional methods that are being used on the network. The delivery's there. We can see when this money is being used effectively on innovation, and I say delivering a one-time fix. That's how you can really get value money for the taxpayer.
In saying that, Ben, there'll be many people who say, yes, fixing potholes is important, but at the end of the day, if you're fixing lots of different potholes on the one road, is the more sensible thing just to resurface the entire road? I assume that's just not done because of cost, but as I think the Lib Dems put it this morning, there's only so many times you can sew a pair of trousers before you realise you need a new pair of trousers.
So I think it would be brilliant if we could resurface every single road. But as we see, the average road in the UK is resurfaced every 90 years. So it simply isn't practical with the budgets we've got available to resurface every road. It's really the potholes and the patching that is affecting road users today. And that's where we really say, if you're going to fix that road, if you're going to fix those potholes today, why not do so in a permanent manner? A reactive pothole can cost over £80, whereas the local authorities that are using innovation like the Pothole Pro, they're seeing it less than £30. And when you look at a pothole being fixed every 18 seconds in the UK, it's really important they do it in a permanent manner.
Did you say a road gets resurfaced every 19 years or 90 years? 19?
90.
Yeah. Wow, OK. And just very finally on this, though, from a business point of view for JCB, I mean, that's who you work for, you know, potholes are good for business, are they not?
Well, I think potholes affect all of us. The cost of the economy is £5 billion every year. And the benefit cost ratio, if you put £1 into the highways, generally you're getting £5 back in the economy. So it really does make sense. But what we're calling is for the money being used in the pothole repairs to be done in permanent manner, using innovation to really make that step change. We can't expect this highways crisis to really end unless we use different technologies, different innovation, like the Pothole Pro, to really make that difference.
OK, Ben from JCB there, thank you very much in joining us. You cannot claim that we do not give you an eclectic mix on this show, because coming up next on Business Live, from potholes to, yes, I'm not joking, oat milk, we'll be telling you why millions of pounds has been invested into British farms and why they're helping to produce this plant-based alternative. But is it good for you and the economy? That's up next on Sky News.
The Chancellor is looking for ways to promote growth.
Today, I want to talk about economic growth.
What plans will Rachel Reeves forecast for this spring?
Our growth prospects.
And will they bloom?
To British growth for growth, driving economic growth.
Get the full story first on Sky News.
Growth is the #1 mission.
The Chancellor is looking for ways to promote growth.
Today, I want to talk about economic growth.
What plans will Rachel Reeves forecast for this spring?
Our growth prospects.
And will they bloom?
To British growth for growth, driving economic growth.
Get the full story first on Sky News.
Growth is the #1 mission.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky's security and defence editor. I've covered Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent. Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
We arrive, a secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation futures.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
1,500 movies. I don't want this flight to end. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Welcome back to Business Live on Sky News. Now, oat milk, it might not be for everyone, but there's been a huge surge in popularity when it comes to the plant-based alternative to dairy. As a result, Alpro has announced a multi-million-pound investment into British farms producing oats as part of a drive to support local farming. Well, Alpro's UK's general manager is John Rubery and joins me now. Very good morning to you, John. Have we seen a massive surge in oat milk sales?
Yeah, I think so. You know, Alpro has been the pioneer of the plant-based revolution for almost 40 years. Our local factory in Kettering has been at the heart of it for 25 years. And what we are seeing today is over the last 5 years, half of the UK households have tried a plant-based drink. 60% of what we sell now is in the market is oat, but only 1% is made and claimed to be from UK oat. So it's growing, it's significant, and it's a significant investment into UK farming.
Is it not just a fad, though? I mean, you know, there's been criticism of almond milk in recent years for its environmental impact. Oat milk is better for the environment, I think most conclude, but not necessarily good for your diet. It's got a lot of starch in it, is that right?
I think the reality over the last 40 years, our business has evolved as consumers' needs and tastes evolved. We originally started, as you said, as a soya business, supporting people that were actually intolerant to dairy. But what we have found now is that because 60% of plant-based milks is now oat, we've evolved to ensure that we invest in the UK community, we invest in Great British farming, and we support people leading healthy, balanced lives.
But I suppose the big question is, how aware are people of the, you know, you're right, some people are intolerant to dairy, others simply just do not like the taste and do want an alternative. Are they aware, though? That's the question, is that are you informing consumers enough of, you know, some of the downsides, and there are downsides to these alternative drinks?
Yeah, I understand why you'd ask that question. Actually, to have healthy food, there needs to be some amount of minimal processing. Really, the UK oat is the star of the show, and we fortify all of our products to ensure our consumers get the best quality, best nutrition. It's high in fibre, low in saturated fat, packed with nutrients and minerals. So we think we provide great nutrition. And that's the essence of our business for 40 years.
And John, talk to me about working with farmers in the UK. You know, they've been under a lot of pressure recently. We've seen a lot of protests. You know, in terms of what they're getting from this, what are they getting, essentially? You know, is this more money for farmers? And what are they doing? What's the alternative, effectively?
Yeah, great question. I guess there has been no better time to support Great British farmers. And you're right, it's a multi-million-pound investment, not just in UK manufacturing of our Kettering site, which now employs over 252 women and men, but also into Great British farming. And what moving to all UK oats does is enables our farmers to have new avenues and new markets for their crops. And actually, we know as an industry, when we back British. It leads to increased resilience and greater potentials for growth for our farmers.
And just very finally, John, you know, you guys look at this all the time. As I say, we've had our almond milk, we've had oat milk. Is there going to be another alternative? What should consumers look out for that you guys are working on?
Well, they should certainly look out for homegrown UK oats, and we've taken that provenance and pride in Great Britain all the way through to packaging with the Union Jack on the packs and also the field as well. Because we are the biggest brand from a consumption perspective, it's available nationwide as well. So the great thing is that our consumers continue to get great quality, great nutrition in all grocery retailers nationwide.
OK, John Rubery there from Alpro. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Sky News.
Thank you.
We're just going to bring you up to date with a little bit of breaking news in the last couple of minutes. It's from the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, or IPSA, which saying that MPs' pay will increase by 2.8% for the next financial year, i.e., I assume this is from April, so a couple of weeks next week's time, actually. That would take their pay, it's currently at £91,346, so it would take it up closer to, I would say, around £95,000 a year. So confirmation that the MP's pay will increase by 2.8% for the next financial year. OK, you're watching Sky News Business Live. That's it for the moment. We're back at 4:30 this afternoon. Do join me then if you can. Continuing coverage of the news up next at midday, and I'll see you a little later.